The former Health Secretary, Matt Hancock, has described the leaking of thousands of his WhatsApp messages, written during the height of the COVID pandemic, as a massive betrayal and breach of trust. He says they were released in a, quote, biased account to suit an anti-lockdown agenda. But the journalist, Isabel Oakeshott, who revealed the messages, says she's acted in the public interest. They suggest Hancock pushed to close schools during the pandemic, while the Education Secretary at the time, Sir Gavin Williamson, wanted them to stay open. Our political correspondent, Jonathan Blake, has more from Westminster.
The impact of the pandemic on education.
We are keeping that mask on at all times during the day.
Pupils and teachers wearing masks, schools closed to limit the spread of COVID. Big decisions under new scrutiny. The journalist Isabel Oakeshott, a critic of lockdown measures, was given access to Matt Hancock's WhatsApp messages to help him write his book. She's since passed them to the Daily Telegraph, breaking a legal agreement.
This is about the millions of people, every one of us in this country, that were adversely affected by the catastrophic decisions to lock down this country repeatedly, often on the flimsiest of evidence for political reasons.
Yet you helped Matt Hancock write a book justifying all those very decisions.
Why? Because I wanted to get to the truth of it.
Matt Hancock accused her of betrayal. In a statement, he said there is absolutely no public interest for this huge breach. All the materials for the book have already been made available to the inquiry, he said, which is the right and only place for everything to be considered properly and the right lessons to be learned. He added, as we've seen, releasing them in this way gives a partial, biased account to suit an anti-lockdown agenda. In late 2020, Sir Gavin Williamson, then Education Secretary, argued for schools in England to stay open. Mr Hancock had wanted them closed. An exchange appears to show him pursuing that approach. I want to find a way, Gavin having won the day, of actually preventing a policy car crash, he said, when the kids spread the disease in January, adding, for that, we must now fight a rearguard action for a rational policy. Weeks later, the Prime Minister announced schools in England would close as part of a lockdown.
Day by day, new evidence was emerging as the scientists were learning about this virus, and from that new that experience and those lessons, we were then taking decisions about what to do in schools where, 8 million children were in very close quarters. But we did always want to do everything we could to keep schools open.
Right from the start, for me, it became clear that children's well-being just wasn't one of the high priority considerations here. But there hadn't been the remedial action put into schools to be able to mitigate any problem coming down the track.
Other messages appear to show Matt Hancock and Gavin Williamson discussing teachers' access to PPE. Sir Gavin said some will just want to say they can't, so they have an excuse to avoid having to teach. Later, Matt Hancock congratulated him on a cracking announcement on exams, adding what a bunch of absolute arses the teaching unions are. Sir Gavin Williamson has said in the earlier exchange he was responding regarding unions and has the utmost respect for teachers who work tirelessly to support students. Private discussions, now public, casting new light on decisions with huge consequences. Jonathan Blake, BBC News.
First would be infiltration, right? This includes invading the universities, industries, financial institutions, technologies like TikTok, even sports and Hollywood. Infiltration's important. You got to get here first, right, if you're going to do an invasion. And why is it so important? Well, the communists have been working on it for more than a century. They even have a name for it. If you were going to call something a long march through institutions, you'd probably be telegraphing that you were intending a long march through institutions, because that's what they called it. So if the infiltration of our institutions is it actually happening? Well, here's a map of all the known Confucius institutes in the United States. Our educational institutions that are run by the Chinese Communist Party. Infiltration? I say that's a check. Step two, once you infiltrate, you need collaboration. You always need useful idiots.
Just in from Capitol Hill, we are learning that the House Ethics Committee is now kicking off its investigation into Congressman GeorgeSantos, and it's got an interesting first move. NBC's Ryan Nobles is back with us. What can you tell us, Ryan?
Yeah, Chris, this is a significant development. It's really the first public acknowledgement by the House Ethics Committee that they are moving forward with a full-scale investigation into embattled Congressman George Santos of New York. Of course, Santos accused of doctoring his resume, potential election financing mistakes, and many other things. And this is the first time that we've known for a fact that the Ethics Committee is actually going to take a full-scale investigation into this. And what they've decided to do is impanel what they're calling a subcommittee that's going to be specifically tasked with looking into the Santos allegations. It's going to be chaired by Congressman David Joyce. Now, this will probably be the last we hear from them publicly as this process plays itself out. In general, the Ethics Committee does the lion's share of their work behind closed doors. We've known for some time that there have been a number of complaints that were filed with the Ethics Committee from other members of Congress, from outside groups as well, that have asked the Ethics Committee to look into this, but we've not known exactly what the Ethics Committee had planned to do with that information. So now we know that this investigation is underway. Now, what it could ultimately mean for Santos, we're going to have to wait and see. This could be a lengthy process, but the Ethics Committee has a wide range of recommendations that they could offer up to the rest of the Congress in order to act, among them even a potential expulsion of George Santos from Congress. He could also be censured, fined, a number of different options that the Ethics Committee has at their disposal. This, of course, against the backdrop of other potential investigations into Santos at both the federal and state level. We know that investigators have said that they're looking into the accusations against him. But this is a significant development in the scandal around George Santos. We have reached out to his office to ask for a response into this inquiry. And I should point out right now, Chris, that the President of the United States is actually walking behind me, so we'll have to see what he has to say.
A 19-second video of Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has gotten millions of views on Twitter. The viral video shows Zelensky speaking at a press conference on the anniversary of Russia's invasion, and it sure sounds from this short clip like he made a dramatic declaration that Americans have to fight in Ukraine.
The U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight. Because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing.
Critics of American financial and military support for Ukraine have reacted furiously to this clip and shared it on social media. They include Republican Senator Mike Lee of Utah and Monica Crowley, a former Trump administration Treasury Department spokesperson. Crowley wrote, "Zelensky now directly threatening us and claiming American sons and daughters will have to fight and die for Ukraine." However, Zelensky did not actually make that claim. This 19-second video takes him way out of context. The full clip shows that he wasn't talking about Americans fighting in Ukraine at all. Here is what really happened. Zelensky was asked about what he'd say to Americans who think the U.S. is providing too much support for Ukraine. He first thanked the American people, President Biden and Congress, for their support. He urged Americans to see Ukrainians as similar to themselves. He urged the U.S. not to give up its leadership position in the world. And then he said this.
The U.S. is never going to give up on the NATO member states. If it happens so that Ukraine, due to various opinions and weakening and depleting of assistance, loses, Russia is going to enter Baltic states, NATO member states, and then the U.S. will have to send their sons and daughters exactly the same way as we are sending their sons and daughters to war, and they will have to fight. Because it's NATO that we're talking about, and they will be dying, God forbid, because it's a horrible thing. I wish peace and Ukrainian support to the United States.
People are free to criticize that actual comment from Zelensky, but he was clearly not saying the U.S. military should fight on Ukrainian soil. He was saying the U.S. would have to fight in other countries, NATO countries the U.S. has formally committed to help defend if Russia invaded those countries later. So, as always, when you come across a sensational but short clip on social media, it's always a good idea to look for the extended footage.
We have breaking news for you out of Washington. In a new court filing, the Department of Justice says that former President Trump can be sued by U.S. Capitol Police over the January 6th insurrection. I want to bring in NBC's Ken Delanian back with us, Tali Farhadian Weinstein. Ken, what more can you tell us about this ruling?
Chris, this DOJ opinion holds that President Trump does not have absolute immunity from multiple civil lawsuits filed by police officers and members of Congress, which seek to hold him liable for damages stemming from the January 6th riot. The point the Justice Department is making here is that speaking on public matters of public concern is a traditional function of the presidency, and he would be immune from lawsuits regarding that kind of speech. But a speech far outside the president's office that allegedly incited a riot is not covered by that immunity, according to the Justice Department. And a federal judge in one of these cases has also held that position, that Trump can be sued, that his speech exhorting people to go to the Capitol on January 6th was not covered by presidential immunity. Now it's in the appeals court, and the Justice Department has weighed in favor of allowing Trump to be sued. Now, the Justice Department is not taking the position that Trump's speech was incitement. That's what's a subject of this litigation. But what they are saying is that he shouldn't be able to claim immunity from these lawsuits, Chris.